We are now a month out from the European parliamentary elections, and I wanted to take a look in this video at some other countries besides Germany that have some interesting polling trends just to kind of get a general overall look of what the situation is in those countries. And in today's video, I wanted to do Poland, Hungary, Austria, and the Netherlands, and I'm thinking about doing another one with some other countries, specifically France and Italy, in the future. But firstly, I want to say thank you to everyone that has joined the channel. I've gotten a large increase in subscribers over the past few days since the last video, and it has increased from around 50 to 300. So I thank you everyone that has subscribed and all the people that have watched the videos, and I welcome everyone to the channel. And as I've stated previously, this is a English-speaking channel. I am an American covering German politics, but also politics in European countries, mainly focusing on elections, polls, election analysis from kind of an objective, neutral standpoint. And so that is kind of the primary focus of this channel, but I will occasionally talk about other European countries. Now, of course, this video talking about 4 specific countries is not going to be completely in depth, so please forgive me if there are some kind of minor mistakes or the way I portray a situation might be very simplified, and that is because in this video we'll not be going into depth or into detail into the parties and overall situations in those specific countries. But feel free to comment and like, share, subscribe if you like the videos, or if you have any thing to add, feel free to do that. I know that, of course, with these topics, it is very everything is up for debate. A lot of terms and the way we define political parties or political groups might be different based on people's perspectives. So of course that's going to be always something that we have. But anyway, I hope you all like this video, and I will be doing plenty more in the future. But to get started, we're going to go to the 4 countries and kind of look at the polls as they are right now. All right, let's first look at the Netherlands. And if we see here the results of the polls, it's very similar to what happened in the legislative or general election back in November of last year. The party of Geert Wilders, the Party of Freedom, the PVV, which is an ally of the AFD. They are part of the right-wing populist, further right ID group, the Identity and Democracy group. They are ahead in the polls, not as far ahead as they are in national polling, but for the EU election polls, they are at around 22, 23%, and they are ahead of the left-wing alliance of the Labour and Greens, which is currently in second place at around 18%. The party of the former Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, is at 12.6%. Now, the results for the PVV is definitely a victory for the party. It is definitely a victory for Wilders and a victory for the European right. And the Netherlands has a very diverse political field. They have very many political parties. However, they do not have, the amount of seats that Germany has, so it will be very important for parties to get around 3% in order to win at least that one seat. I believe the Netherlands has 17 seats, and so not a major country, but although it is, one of the countries that borders Germany, it does have a very not similar, but it is a very kind of northwestern liberal democracy in the same way Germany is, and so it is interesting to look at. But we see very, very many parties of different ideologies and different kind of political orientations, all around 4, 5, 6%. But the 3 main parties are the PVV, the Left-Wing Alliance, which before competed as 2 separate parties. They're actually part of 2 different European parliamentary groups. The Labour Party is part of the Socialists and Democrats, along with the SPD in Germany, and the Green League, of course, is with the Greens. Now, if we look at the next country, which is Austria, we can see a somewhat similar picture. The Freedom Party of Austria, another right-wing populist, kind of further right political party, also aligned with Wilders' PVV and the AFD in Germany. They have been polling as the largest party here for a significant amount of time, several months, going back into last year. In the nationwide polling, they've been in the lead, and also in the European parliamentary election polls, which they've started to take since this election got closer, they have been clearly in the lead ahead of the 2 people's parties, the traditional parties. The politics in Austria is not exactly like Germany, but it does have a lot of similarities. Now, the Freedom Party in 2016 was actually polling as the largest party, and they got into a government with the OVP, the Austrian People's Party, here in the lighter blue. And there was actually 2 scandals. One scandal that happened in 2019 that negatively affected the Freedom Party, the FPO, and that hurt them. But then there was another scandal a few years later that negatively affected the OVP, the Austrian People's Party, and so this has caused a drastic shift in the results. Now, in the 2019 election, the Freedom Party suffered severe losses, and the People's Party had a stunning victory. but now it's kind of reverted some. The Austrian People's Party, as we can see, got 34% last time. They're around 20%, a huge drop. The Social Democrats are, 24%. This is not a huge improvement, and they are still in second place, but they are, kind of at a moderate result. The Freedom Party, this, of course, if they maintain this will be the first time that the party wins nationwide in any election. They were able to become second place in 1999 under their then leader Jörg Haider in the 90s, and then become part of a government. But since then, they've struggled to be on the same level and compete with the two People's Parties, the Social Democrats and the People's Party. Now, I will definitely do some more videos on Austrian politics, not just at the EU level, but also nationwide as those elections get closer, because Austria is another German-speaking country. It is also interesting to look at, and it is one of the countries I will focus on. You do have also the Greens and Liberals, both at around 12%, but nonetheless, this will be a victory for the European right if the FPO manages to achieve this. Another, ally for the AfD, and the Social Democrats are not collapsing here. This is a moderately decent result for them. I think that they will be kind of satisfied with 24, maybe 25%. Now, what's interesting to note is if you look at the Netherlands and Austria, countries in kind of Central Western Europe that have traditionally been more liberal or social democratic, less, prone to more right-wing populist ideas. I mean, Austria is a more conservative society, but those countries have not had the same level of a kind of a conservative, reactionary right-wing movement that has been able to take power in the same extent that Hungary and Poland have. Now, what's very interesting is you can see that the right, the kind of far right, the populist nationalist right, is on the rise in the Netherlands and in Austria, but in places where they were strong before, they're actually weakening, and this is the case in Poland, and as we'll see later on, in Hungary. Now, in Poland, the Civic Platform, Civic Coalition, which was led by Donald Tusk into a victory at the last federal elections in Poland. Donald Tusk was actually a former council president in the EU, so he has a lot of experience with the European Union. This is a very pro-EU party, kind of a liberal to center-right political alliance, and this is the current governing party. The Law and Justice Party was in charge for 8 years, and we can see that this result, of course, is a defeat for the Law and Justice Party. This is a drop from the 45% that they got in the last election down to 32%. And of course, the Liberals are slightly ahead. The Civic Coalition of Donald Tusk is slightly ahead. So this is a defeat for the Law and Justice Party in Poland. Now, the question is, will the Law and Justice Party actually be able to maintain first place? It is close, and now that they're in the opposition, they can kind of make the argument that a lot of the problems Poland is struggling through it has to do with the new coalition. However, they are fairly new, and they do have kind of a still high approval and favorability rating. They're in alliance with the Third Way, kind of another liberal center-right coalition, and the left-wing coalition of the various Social Democrats. Each of these three parties or more alliances have various parties within them, and it's definitely very complicated, but they're somewhat together a broad, like, liberal centrist kind of coalition that came together despite their differences, mainly to overturn the rule of the Law and Justice Party, which had made themselves into this kind of right-wing populist party, campaigning against, the migration in the EU and also the power of the EU. They had become kind of one of the rivals towards the more Europhile, pro-EU base out of Germany and other countries. And this was the same for, Hungary. But so this result is definitely a very interesting result to look at. This will be one of the most important races or most important results. Of course, this won't determine anything in Poland. Like all of these countries, none of these results will mean anything for the national parliament. This will determine the EU parliament's composition as a whole, but it is definitely symbolic for the nations themselves as well. Now, one interesting thing to note is the right-wing confederation, which is arguably to the right of the Law and Justice Party, is at 12%. They do not have necessarily a solid relationship with Law and Justice. They are not allies by any measure. However, if the three kind of governing parties fail to win a majority and Law and Justice and Confederation win a majority, that will kind of be seen as a defeat for the government as well. But nonetheless, it's likely that a defeat for Law and Justice is pretty much certain at this point. Now, if we go to Hungary, which is similar to Poland, we have to take things into note. Hungary is a very conservative society, very socially conservative. The party Fidesz of Viktor Orban has kind of asserted themselves as the dominant party in the country. They have been able to use a lot of the institutions in the country to reinforce this kind of conservative, worldview. It is a very conservative society, conservative electorate, and Fidesz, which is the party of Orban, they were formerly part of the EPP along with the CDU, but they have been kind of suspended from that and are kind of a non-attached group. They have connections to the European far right, to people like Matteo Salvini and Lega, and they have connections to parties that are in the ID group, but they also have connections to their old allies in the EPP. So especially one notable one is the CSU, the Christian Social Union in Bavaria. They have close ties to. They have a lot of economic ties to Germany. And if we can see here, the results are not really kind of certain. It's clear that the Fidesz will likely lose some support. However, they are clearly ahead in first place. A lot of the polls fluctuate a lot. Now, in the last Hungarian federal election, there was expected to be a loss in support for Fidesz. There was an alliance of various left-wing, center-left, center-right, centrist parties in the opposition to kind of oust Fidesz from power. That attempt failed, and Fidesz actually managed to increase their margin by winning a few more seats. But we can see here what's very interesting is there's been a splinter group from Fidesz, a politician defected from the party, and this new party, TISA, is kind of a party that presents itself as an alternative to both Fidesz and the pro-EU opposition. They're kind of an anti-establishment party, anti-corruption party, and so it's likely Fidesz will lose some support, but as long as they get around the high 40s, mid 40s, I think that's a clear signal that, Orban is holding on, and so this result won't really be too meaningful. But if the opposition parties and this new party are able to push Fidesz maybe to 30%, that is a clear sign that Orban's power is weakening. And this is very important because Orban is a central figure in the EU in terms of the opposition. He is one person specifically on the European Council that opposes a lot of what the EU does. The EU Council has a lot of veto power, and so him as a head of state, although he's not in the European Parliament, him as a head of state is very powerful and usually gets into fights and conflicts with the European Commission. So this result, although Hungary is a small country, because it is a kind of electoral test for Viktor Orban, it will be an important result. So these results, of course, are the polls for the European elections a month out. I probably won't do any more video analysis on these polls for these countries, but I will do some videos after the results looking at these countries briefly. Of course, Germany I will go a lot more into depth, but I wanted to take a look at these countries. Some of you guys might find them interesting if you come from these countries or, if you've heard about them. So this is not, of course, a total in-depth look at everything in specific, but rather kind of a general view of the way the situation is and what we can expect to see in a month's time. So I hope everyone liked and enjoyed this video, and please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.